Welcome to episode number 145 of the Marine Lair podcast. It's our mailbag episode. We'll answer your guys' best mailbag questions, and we'll close out the show with Speak Your Mind.
This show is brought to you by Pagotch's Pub 85, your go-to spot in Kirkland to have a great time with your friends, watch the games. All-Star Week's coming up. You want a spot to go watch? You want to watch the Home Run Derby? Head over there, and you'll get some great food and drink specials while you're at it, too. If you go during happy hour specials are $3 and $4 drinks on Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. So all of that, great food, great drinks, fun time with your friends, great place to watch some games. It's over at Pagotch's Pub 85 in Kirkland. And before we start the show, here's your reminder. Make sure to download these podcast episodes if you're listening. You're doing us a big favor if you do. Leave a 5-star review, leave a written review. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe, and then follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Lair Pod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. On one from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Lair podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network, recording Thursday afternoon, July 11th, post-series from the Padres series down in San Diego. And it was nice to see the Mariners had one of their best offensive performances of the season in Game 1, and then they had a more normal Mariners offensive outing in Game 2, and still managed to win both games. And now, Lyle, the Mariners are setting themselves up with a pretty good chance to go into the break underratedly hot. Is that too optimistic of a take, or do we need to be negative again?
No, it's not too optimistic, because if you win both games against the Padres, which they did, and then you win 3 of 4 against the Angels, that's winning 5 of your final 6 going into the break, and that's a good stretch, even if it's against what is mostly an unserious Oregon, the Los Angeles Angels. You take wins where you take wins. They all count the same. Now, to your point about the polar opposite days against the Padres, I feel like there's probably some correlation to that. Maybe not. The starting pitchers that were on the mound each day for the Padres, a.k.a. one that's basically a AAA starter and another that's had a really good year in Michael King.
Yeah, I would say so. And I'd say Julio's days epitomized both of those. Julio dominated on Tuesday. That was good to see. He had his best offensive game of the year. Second 4-hit game of the season. First game with 4 hits and multiple extra base hits this year is what he should probably be doing a lot more often. And he turns around on Wednesday and has a sombrero. So, it's a start. It's a start.
Wasn't it a golden sombrero? Wasn't it 4 strikeouts?
It was a golden sombrero. 4 strikeouts, yeah. But hey, 1 golden sombrero and 1 best offensive game of the season is better than 2 bad offensive games. So, we'll take it.
This is true. Look, the Mariners swept the series. 2-game series, but they swept it against a team that's in a playoff spot right now in the Padres. You'll take your wins where you can get them. Hopefully this sparks something. Is it guaranteed to spark something? No, we're probably going to need to see what that Astros series looks like out of the break to really gauge what this team could look like moving forward. But still, you take your wins where you can take your wins. They're at 50 wins this year, a lot faster than they were in 2023, so that's another good sign. And if you want to stay on the positives here, you want to shout out Jorge Polanco?
Yeah, I was going to say, shout out Jorge Polanco. And why this is such an important stretch for him is because this upcoming series against the Angels is the last series where the front office isn't tied down essentially with something else, or the draft. They're tied down with the draft. The draft's on Sunday. And that's very important to them, especially an organization like the Mariners, which has done such a great job drafting, and is a big reason why they're so successful right now. It's not 100% on Jorge Polanco's mind. He wants to play well no matter what, but the Mariners will be more active with moves once the draft is over, and Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander can put their full effort on this current roster opposed to drafting their future one, which is why it was probably important for Jorge Polanco to have a really good series in San Diego. I don't even know if him having an insane 4-game set against the Angels will save him. I feel like his fate, for the most part, is already decided based on the first 90 or so games of the season. But it wouldn't hurt. It certainly wouldn't hurt now, later, more than ever, to break out and start hitting like we know he used to be able to hit, because I'm sure the Mariners would much rather players on their own roster play significantly better and impact the offense rather than having to go dish out some of these prospects they really don't want to trade. So it's a start. Does it continue? I don't know.
I wouldn't say Jorge Polanco's totally dead. I'm not saying he's in a great spot, but if we get close to the trade deadline and he's still hitting well and the Mariners still haven't acquired a second baseman, they may not do it. They may not go get a second baseman. They may stick with Polanco. Now, he's really going to have to show signs. Some of the power is going to have to come back. Strikeouts are going to have to go down. He's going to have to consistently make real contact with the ball, all that stuff. But if he really has a good month of July, the Mariners may say, okay, let's shift our focus to going and getting outfielders. Let's go get outfielders. Let's potentially get a reliever. Christian Walker's out there. That's another potential option for a rental. We've talked about first base potentially. If Polanco really hits, they may say we can focus on other spots. Now, I don't think anybody's banking on the fact that Polanco's going to get hot, but we'll see. I wouldn't say he is totally dead in the water. Again, I would not say he's in a great spot. I would say these next 2 weeks are extremely important for him.
Would you say, so not, if not dead in the water, even though he had a really good 2 games in San Diego, his starting spot now is probably not guaranteed. There were many people after the off day on Monday saying, well, Jorge Polanco probably shouldn't be starting anymore. And I think that's totally fair, and I was in that boat as well. Now, his starts will probably be a little bit more mixed, but totally on the bench. Like, say they start him tonight. We don't have the lineup yet. Say they start him tonight on Thursday. That idea, for now, would probably falter for Scott Servais. Like, well, if he's going to continue to hit, we might as well leave him in the lineup, because it's been pretty evident they don't really trust Bliss, at least not at this point in his development, at the plate consistently, and they would rather that be Jorge Polanco. So there's some things to juggle. They're going to ride his hot hand, certainly not benching him until they're forced to do otherwise.
Right. I think in conclusion, the month of July is going to be extremely crucial for Jorge Polanco, and especially these next 2 weeks. If he can prove that he can have a real turnaround second half, maybe the Mariners will stick with him. If not, they'll probably go out and get somebody. I think that's fair to say.
So does he need to have a good game, you think, like every single day? All the Angels series, then all the Astros series as well, to avoid any of that? Because if he goes out there tonight and has 3 strikeouts and looks terrible again at the plate, people are going to want him right back there on the bench.
I don't know if he has to have a 3-hit night every night, but he's going to have good series after good series. He's going to have to look back at the end of each series and say, yeah, I was a contributing factor in the offense. I made an impact. Nobody gets a 2 to 3 hit night every night, but he is going to have to string together some good games consecutively. I think that's for sure.
Well, he might need to, based on how bad he was the first 3 months. Lost a lot of ground.
So we'll see. Right. Yeah, there's still some time before the deadline. There's about 3 weeks, so I think there's still some time for things to play out, especially considering the trade deadline and the moves that get made at the trade deadline seem to get pushed further and further back every year. So if the trade deadline doesn't really get crazy till 48 hours before, that gives Jorge Polanco a lot more time. If it starts early this year, it may not. But if it's the former, we may see Jorge Polanco get a lot of playing time until August 1st to see, can this truly turn around, or is this just not going to work?
We'll have to see.
That's right. Okay, before we get to our mailbag, I wanted to give everybody a quick little programming update for next week's shows. So we've talked about TJ and I are going to be in Dallas. We're going to All-Star Week. We're fired up about it. We'll probably talk about that a little more later in the show. But we're going to have a little bit of a change for this upcoming week and when we release our podcast, especially with the All-Star break going on. So instead of Wednesday and Friday this week, we're going to put out an episode Monday and then a normal episode Friday. Monday's episode will be probably a somewhat short one, but it'll be all about the Mariners' first round draft pick. It'll be about whoever the Mariners select in the first round. We're going to do a dive into him, who the player is, what he can bring to the table, and kind of our instant reactions to the pick. That'll be out first thing Monday morning after the draft Sunday night. So that'll be Monday. And then Friday, we'll recap All-Star Week. And we're also planning, at least as of now, to have Joe Doyle on with us to recap the entirety of the draft and break down a bunch of the Mariners picks with us so we can get some expert insight from him. So Monday, Friday, those are when the podcasts are coming out this week. After that, it'll be back to normal.
Thanks for the update, Lyle. let's get into our mailbag now. We got a lot of good questions here in this mailbag covering a variety of topics. So let's start off on YouTube. Make sure I have the name right. Calum Mo on YouTube sends us this question. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on why you think Scott continues to use Mitch Haniger as a lefty masher, including pinch hitting.
I almost want to turn this back to you because you texted me as we're doing prep for this show and said, have you seen some of the other Mariners bats against left-handed pitching?
So let's cover that. So let's start with Mitch Haniger himself as a lefty masher, because this is why this question was spurned. Why does Scott Service use Mitch Haniger as a lefty masher when Mitch Haniger this season has a 17 WRC plus against lefties? Not 117, 17, meaning that is 83% below league average against left-handers. That's not very good. Now, here's an idea. Let's start based off of Mitch's past. Mitch in his past, in 2022, his last season with the Mariners and his last somewhat healthy season, had a 120 WRC plus against lefties. In 2021, Mitch Haniger had a 148 WRC plus against lefties. So there's a bit of a track record that Scott Service wants to go off of in hopes that Mitch Haniger hits better against lefties. The problem is, for Scott's sake, he doesn't have much else to go off of when looking at right-handed bats to face lefties, or left-handed. We'll start with the righties, and then we'll go to lefties in terms of outfielders the Mariners have available to them to hit against lefties. So let's run through the other right-handed hitting outfielders. Julio's playing every day no matter what, so that doesn't even matter what he does against lefties because he has to play anyways. Victor Robles has played well in his small sample as a Seattle Mariner. But it's not like he's crushed lefties in his career. He has a 103 career WRC plus against lefties. Not amazing, not terrible, but not great. So there's no over-the-top inclination to play Victor Robles over Mitch Haniger against lefties. You can make the case, especially right now, based on how Haniger's hitting. But career-wise, there's no real incentive for him to do that. And Dylan Moore, out of the 76 games he's played this season, has only played 19 in the outfield. So saying he should be a realistic option to replace Haniger in the outfield, as this roster is currently constructed, is not how Scott Service wants to roll at this point. So remember, 76 games, 19 games he's played in left field. Not even right field, left field for Dylan Moore. And Demo's hit against lefties, but they've needed Demo on the infield more than they've needed him in the outfield this season. So that's why he's not the option to replace it. Now, what about the lefties? Because this question frames, well, guys like Luke Raley are hit better against lefties than Mitch Haniger does. Well, the lefties have not been great against lefties this year. Not a very shocking development, but they haven't been. Luke Raley has a 76 WRC plus against lefties this year. Dominic Canzone, Lyle, against lefties this year, has a negative 65 WRC plus against lefties this year. In case you were curious, the combined WRC plus of those two against lefties is 11. So that's why those two won't get nods over Mitch Haniger against lefties. What about the guys in the minors? Well, Jonathan Clase, who's just got called up this week, is unproven. And most people, I would say, still don't believe he's ready as a big league hitter. So that's why he doesn't get the nod. Samad Taylor has a career 61 WRC plus against lefties. Cade Marlowe is a lefty himself and has a high strikeout rate. So that also wouldn't work. So ultimately, it comes down to the Mariners don't have enough options to hit lefties at the big league level and at AAA level for what they need Mitch Haniger to do. So Scott Service really has no choice at this point. He doesn't, because the other options are not good enough to hit against lefties.
We should probably preface the Canzone thing with he has a very, very small sample size against left-handed pitching. So that's why his WRC plus is pretty low. But Luke Raley, there's an argument there. Like 76 versus 17. That's a fair argument, right?
Not really. It's still not productive.
But if you're talking about why is Mitch playing over certain guys.
Well, Luke Raley plays every day anyways now, so he has to.
Sometimes,
yeah, but Luke Raley is your best offensive bat, so I think that's an easier argument. What about other guys besides Luke Raley? Because you have to fill 2 corner outfield spots, and the other options I just listed don't make a compelling case.
Okay, so this is under the assumption Julio and Raley are playing every day, and then everybody else is fighting for that last spot.
Correct.
I have started to think about this over the last few days. And again, like we always have to preface these Mitch Haniger talks with, these are not fun conversations to have because Mitch Haniger's loved here by the Mariners, in the Pacific Northwest, by the fan base for good reason. He's been here a long time, fan favorite, works his tail off. Guys in the locker room and the clubhouse love him. But if we're talking about on-field production, it has really, really been tough, and especially here in 2024, or more here in 2024. Obviously, the majority of his career has been very good. But Cade Marlowe started to get pretty hot over the last week in Tacoma. He's had a really good start to July. His OPS for the year is starting to climb up. It's about 730 now. And I'm starting to think about the idea of him being on this roster over Mitch Haniger until the Mariners make a trade for another outfield bat. And I say that because, 1, Marlowe's now swinging it. 2, you know he's going to be a better defender than Mitch Haniger. Mitch Haniger's almost a -1 WAR player this year, and a lot of that's because of his defense. And Haniger for the year also has an 83 WRC+. So I think about it like this. Do you trust Marlowe to be essentially an 80 WRC+ bat in the big leagues and put up better than a 17 WRC+ against left-handed pitching? The answer to that's yes, and I feel like a lot of people will answer that question with yes. Might be worth it. Mariners are in first place. I know it's a tough thing to swallow the money. I know it's a tough thing to let go of a fan favorite, but I'm just looking at the way Cade Marlowe's starting to play and the fact that we know he is a fine outfielder and say, just feels like he provides a little more value at this point.
I think he's more valuable at this point too, but I think that just kind of gets away from the question. Like how the Mariners operate organizationally, they're not going to call up Cade Marlowe so he can hit lefties. So
no,
and ultimately that's what the question's searching for. So, but yeah, Cade Marlowe would make the Mariners better. That is a correct answer. He would make the Mariners better than what Mitch Haniger is currently putting up in the same position right now. That is correct. But It's not in terms of answering, finding a guy to hit against lefties currently in the organization, that currently does not exist.
Okay. Yes, I agree with that. But if it's more of a broad question of Haniger on the roster versus Marlowe, I'm starting to think Marlowe might do a lot for this team. Or at least a lot might be a strong word, but be a positive contributor.
Essentially he could just be a replacement level player and be more valuable than Mitch. Like 0 WAR. Right. That's all you need.
Sure. Exactly. Okay, let's get to our second question here. This is on YouTube from Daniel Fleming, and he says, if you could add any concession stand to T-Mobile Park, what would it be and why?
I have an answer for you. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Skyline chili. Because it's the greatest food on planet Earth, and we need the heart of the Midwest inserted into T-Mobile Park. I mean, what T-Mobile Park is really missing is average to crappy chili doused in cheese. You put it over spaghetti, hot dogs, whatever you want to put it on. That's what T-Mobile Park is really missing. Midwest values, baby.
Dude, Skyline chili is not food. Skyline chili is not food.
Dog food, more like it. I'm actually kidding. That's not what I would have put in there. I actually went significantly higher quality stuff. Now, I'm not going to some top-tier restaurant saying they should put that in T-Mobile Park because, that's not what the average fan can do. Have you seen these Italian focaccia sandwiches? Have you seen them? Just looking around on some videos.
No.
You haven't? No. Okay. Well, they are like Florentine, a.k.a. they're from Florence. I think that's where they originated from. If I'm not and you're Italian, you could please leave a comment and tell me I'm an idiot, and that's okay. But they've opened a few of these in New York, one of the great food cities we have in this country, and they have these sandwiches all over Italy, but they made their way here to America, so now most Americans who don't travel internationally can have them. and they have these focaccia sandwiches that are just, first of all, massive, and they're packed. At T-Mobile Park, it would probably cost $25, but if you're curious, you can look up this place. It's called, I'll try and pronounce this correctly, All Antico Vinao. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. Let's just spell it out. ALL''ANTICO space VINAIO. And now my Italian ancestors are rolling over in their graves, and that's totally fine. But the sandwiches are insane. They look really good. Focaccia is amazing, and I think it would be a very authentic thing to add to T-Mobile Park. I think it would be a lot of fun. And now that they're a chain, it works out. So,
hey, for people that'll say that's a crazy idea, there's Din Tai Fung at T-Mobile Park. So people can get bougie in Seattle with their food options at T-Mobile Park. You want to have something like crazy Italian sandwiches? Why not?
There's crab in the outfield. You can get Moto Pizza, which is already high quality pizza upstairs.
It's okay.
It's not like they're not high quality options. Yeah, but the real Moto Pizza is really good. Like it is specialty pizza. And I think a focaccia sandwich is on the level as specialty pizza. I think it's the same idea, same level of food.
All right. I went a little more simple with my answers. If there's going to be pizza in the ballpark, I said Joe's Pizza, another New York City staple. It is amazing. It needs to make its way out west. It needs to make its way to T-Mobile Park. Other than that, I just picked two chains that Seattle doesn't have, but desperately needs. Raising Cane's, which is coming to Seattle here soon enough. I can't wait. And then In-N-Out.
That would be good. Those would be the first locations in a ballpark for those foods. That'd be fun. I get behind that. So I thought about Joe's. I did think about it, which is the best pizza I've had. However, T-Mobile Park already has Ballard Pizza in the park, which is the exact same thing, not the same quality. And remember, when you bring a pizza chain into a ballpark, or any food into a ballpark, it's not going to be as good. So,
right.
With the exact same thing, I don't know if like resonate maybe is not the right word, but there's already be something almost exactly like it. However, there won't be something exactly like Raising Cane's, and there won't be something like In-N-Out there. So that I'm behind.
Yeah. Hey, sign me up. Listen, Ballard Pizza's fine, but nothing's Joe's Pizza. If we even get 75% of Joe's Pizza at T-Mobile Park, sign me up.
Yeah. Oh, I'm in for that. Let's get to the next question. This is on YouTube from @TheConnorJoeTrade. And he says, aside from the obvious sellers, White Sox, Marlins, etc., who are the two most intriguing sellers from each league, and who's your number one trade target from each?
So I tried to branch out a little bit with this because the question states aside from the obvious teams, so not the A's, not the White Sox, not the Marlins, teams like that. I'll start with the AL. I said Blue Jays and Rays for the AL. Or sorry, I thought about the Blue Jays and Rays. I kept the Rays and said Brandon Lau, who we've talked about. That would be a fit that makes a lot of sense. Rental bat, second base, WRC plus is close to 130, hits the ball hard. That makes too much sense for the Mariners if they're going to need a second baseman. The other one, I will admit this one's a little bit of a pipe dream, but with the Rangers being out of it, or not out of it, but they're not playing well. They're under 500. They're still 7 back in the division. If they keep losing and they got to the point of the deadline where they actually thought about doing some selling, like again, I'll say this as a pipe dream idea, but Nathaniel Lowe would be a pretty sick addition. So if I'm just talking about good fits for the Mariners, first baseman, 2.5 years of control, it's like a 110 WRC plus hitter, walks a decent amount, doesn't strike out a ton. I'd love to get that guy in Seattle. Now, again, it's probably a pipe dream, but would love to see Nathaniel Lowe.
Now, this question was tricky because when he says aside from the obvious sellers, the problem is there are so few sellers true sellers in Major League Baseball because of the third wild card. So, note, just because we are picking these teams as sellers does not mean these teams will sell, because most of these teams are within 5 games of the wild card or less right now, which for some teams is very doable.
So let me say this, too. 1, I agree with you. 2, I did my AL guys. Give your AL guys, then we can do the NL guys after.
So my AL guys, I did choose the Blue Jays because I think they can have the most impact of any team on this deadline if they're selling. They can swing pennant races with the pieces they have available to them with whoever they decide to trade with. And for the Blue Jays, I think Vladdy was too obvious, and it, again, just doesn't really sound like he's going to get traded. So I'm going to choose the guy I've been hammering for a while, and I think would make the Mariners better, and that's Danny Jansen. I think they need they need another catcher. I really think they do. And then the other team I chose is the Detroit Tigers. They might sell. They might not. They have a couple of intriguing options. Jack Flaherty's on a rental. It will be a rental if you trade for him. The Mariners don't need starters, though. But they do have Mark Canha, who, if you want someone, that would be a soft buy, what we were talking about earlier this week. Soft buying and improving in an outfield spot. Instead of having Mitch Haniger, you have Mark Canha instead, and you upgrade quite a bit.
Yeah. You know, when I was looking at the Blue Jays, I thought about the idea of Justin Turner. Even though he's 39 years old, I thought to myself, could play the corner infield, could DH if you need him to, has been a great bat over the majority of his career. But then I dug into some of the peripherals, and he is in the first percentile of bat speed. So I said, you know what? That's probably not a great fit, which is why I ended up pivoting somewhere else. So thought about it, didn't go through with the idea. National League, I said Giants and Diamondbacks. Again, will these two teams sell? We don't know. The NL wildcard is so up in the air. But if they do, my two guys on the list are two players we've talked about. Lamont Wade, Christian Walker. Christian Walker would be a great addition for this team at the deadline. Should have been an all-star. Power bat, 133 WRC plus hitter. OPS is 840. Rental, wouldn't have to give up a ton. And you could roll with Tyler Locklear in 2025 if you don't re-sign Walker in the offseason. So I said Walker for the Diamondbacks, and I said Lamont Wade for the Giants, who we've talked about as sort of a platoon bat. But you know what? When you're WRC plusing nearly 160 and you're walking almost 20% of the time, I'm interested.
I had the Diamondbacks as well, and I chose the Cubs instead, although the Cubs... This news came out right before we hit record with Cody Bellinger going on the IL, because that would have been my most intriguing target. I know you're not a huge Cody Bellinger guy, but I think he could have had some sort of value if you acquire him at the deadline. Who knows if he's going to be back and playing by the time the deadline rolls around, which will, A, impact his value, B, could incline him, no matter what now, to pick up his player option next year, which is $27.5 million. So I'll keep the Cubs. But the Diamondbacks, though, outside of the Blue Jays, their pieces, if they decide to sell, can impact. It can swing a pennant race if they want. Like Christian Walker's that good. We talked about Randall Grichuk. He is, in terms of a soft buy, he would make a massive impact if you put him in the outfield as a right-handed bat for how he's hit this season. Paul Sewald's also an option as well. So I think those are two pretty good ones right there. Diamondbacks, Cubs. There's a lot of teams you could choose in the National League because they're all bunched right together.
I agree. And that National League wildcard race is going to have some impact here in the next few weeks. We will start to see some teams fall out of it a little bit more. We've already seen it a little bit. I know the Cubs are technically about 3.5 back now, but Bellinger goes out. They're still way under 500. Some of these teams will sell because some of these teams will look at their roster and say, we are not quite a playoff team. And because of that, they'll be willing to ship some pieces away.
Before we get to our next question, let's hear a word from Game Time. Summer is here. We're in the swing of it, and that means it's time to get out to T-Mobile Park and watch the M's. Want to get out to the Pen, grab a drink, and watch the game with your friends? Let Game Time help you get there with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It'll be the biggest series to date right after the All-Star break when the Mariners get home, when the Astros come to town. Get-in price is $35 on Friday, $31 on Saturday, and $27 on Sunday, all on the Game Time app. Get a panoramic view of your seat and toggle the all-in pricing feature so you know how much you're paying and what the view is before you buy. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code JUSTBASEBALL, JUSTBASEBALL, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get to our next mailbag question. This comes from Ellen Rhodes on Instagram, and her question is, unpopular opinion, Munoz has had too many walks. Have seen a lot of blown saves from him, ... So, is Andres Munoz walking too many batters?
I think the blown saves thing might be a little bit out of proportion, but sure, if you're watching Andres Munoz and saying, I would like to see him be more in the strike zone, that is a fair take. Andres Munoz had a really, really good command back in 2022. And since then, it's gone downhill a bit. Now, that doesn't change the fact that that doesn't change the fact in saying that he's not one of the game's elite relievers, because he is. But if you're saying I would like to see one of the game's best relievers also throw a few more strikes, yeah, that's a fair take. Because Andres Munoz also throwing more strikes would only do that much more for him.
You know, at this point, I view his 2022 command as an outlier, because the rest of his career, he's been about a 10% walk guy. About 10%. And that's not horrible. That's only the 45th most in terms of percentage among all relievers. For example, the leader in walks, most walks, is Aroldis Chapman, is over 20%. So he's not the worst. He's almost middle of the pack's the wrong term, but, you know, it's fine. I don't think it's the end of the world. When you have stuff that moves like his does, remember, his sinker moves drastically arm side. It's sometimes hard to get that pitch in the strike zone. And if you compare that to his 2022 season, where he only had to really worry about two pitches. One, his slider breaks the same direction every time, and his fastball was straight. So he didn't really have to worry about his pitch moving too much out of the strike zone. If Andres Munoz tries to paint inside corner to righties now with his sinker, that pitch could just take off and run inside way more, and it'll be a ball, no matter what. So, you know, it's just a little bit more difficult for him now. His pitches move more, and if your pitches move more likely than not, you will struggle to throw strikes at times. That's normal for a reliever. I don't really think it's the end of the world, because ultimately he's also still striking out over 30% of the batters he faces, and as long as there's enough separation between your walk rate and your strikeout rate, I think you'll be okay.
No, it's not the end of the world, and to that point, and to your logic, it's the same thing with Matt Brash when he's healthy. His stuff is so ridiculous that he's probably never going to be an elite command guy, because his stuff just moves too much to sometimes have real command over his pitches. Like those Matt Brash sliders have a mind of their own. You can't always know where it's going because they break too much. So, yeah, with the Munoz sinkers and his new arsenal now, because it's different than what it was in 2022, he may end up having stuff that moves so much that he just doesn't always command the zone as much. But I will say, if you want to get him throwing a few more strikes, again, I don't think that's a crazy opinion. Like, for example, right now he's in the 18th percentile of Major League Baseball in walk rate. He doesn't have to be in the 80th percentile the way he was in 22, but maybe around league average, maybe in the 50th percentile, something like that.
But that number compares him to starters, too.
Yeah, so for relievers, he's more middle of the pack. But, again, just a little bit more. I'm not saying he's going to be George Kirby with his command. He's not. But if you are a person, again, I'm not that concerned about it, and you're not that concerned about it. I'm just playing the side of, if you are a person that says, I would like to see Munoz throw a few more strikes, I will say, okay. Like, that is not the hottest take in the world. That is, like, you have a fair backing point with real data to say, okay, I'd like to see him throw a few more strikes. Is it the end of the world? No. I'm just saying it's not the hottest take in the world.
So at his best, we'll get him down from 11% to 8%. That'll be good.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, that'd be great. All right, next question. This is from Cardi Rave, also on Instagram. He says, which prospect would you be most sad to see leave via trade?
My answer is Colt Emerson. There have been people talking about that he could eventually be named the number one prospect in all of baseball. He has immense upside. He plays a premium position. And ultimately, when it comes to the Mariners farm system, he is farther along than Felnine Celestin is, which is the only player in the farm system, talent-wise, he compares to. So that's why my answer would be that, because you'd see Colt Emerson a year before you'd see Felnine.
Isn't it crazy that while it's not fair to do the Corey Seager comp for Colt Emerson, the fact we've heard people say that, number one, and then there's the similarities of Corey Seager was picked in the 20s, left-handed high school bat, shot his way through the minors, jumped up the prospect rankings, and was a top 3 prospect when he debuted. It kind of feels like Colt Emerson has a chance to do the exact same thing, and that's wild. I can't promise, and I don't think anybody can promise he's going to be Corey Seager, and to put those expectations on him just isn't fair. But the fact there's people out there saying, yeah, Colt Emerson could be the number 1 prospect in baseball here soon enough is crazy. And Mariners fans should be fired up about it. I actually picked Felix Celestine as my number 1. Now, Colt Emerson was a very, very close second, but I feel like Felix's got a chance to be a number 1 prospect in baseball at some point too. And the fact he's got a 984 OPS in the Complex League right now, I know it's the Complex League, but we're seeing our first glimpse of Felix Celestine stateside this year and what he can do, and I'm sitting there watching and saying, wow. So Mariners have 2 guys who I don't want to see them go anywhere with. They better stay in this system.
Yeah, they can both stay. That's fine. We covered the basic. We used this segment to say, please don't trade those players. Thank you.
Yes, correct. Yep. There we go.
The next question comes from Asher_Aver Butch on Instagram. And this question is, who's one current player you would love to have on the 116-win 2001 Mariner team?
We just talked about him, but can I say Andres Munoz? If you're going to look at that 0-1 roster, it was really good. It wasn't perfect if you go down position by position. But, number one, there weren't a lot of relievers that were throwing the way Munoz was throwing back then. There might not have been any, to be totally honest with you. And when you look at the Mariners bullpen, Kazuhiro Sasaki was phenomenal. Arthur Rhodes was phenomenal. But if you had a true dynamite closer ahead of those two to form a 3-headed monster that year, that would do a lot. That shortens games to 6 innings. And when you already have guys in your rotation like Freddie Garcia, like Aaron Seeley, like Jamie Moyer, who can easily go 6 strong, give it right off to the bullpen after that.
Munoz was my pick, too. I mean, he would be talked about in lore if he pitched on that team. With the stuff he currently has, it's like the one player in baseball who throws 103 miles an hour back then. The one guy out of the bullpen. He's got this insane slider and all this stuff. Like that would be pretty insane. I think that's the easy one. I think if we saw Brash this year, Brash, you could make a case for him, too, just because, I mean, legitimately, they would talk about him in the history books. It's like, could you remember seeing this guy? He was absolutely insane, right? And then my last honorable mention, if you wanted a little bit more upside in the rotation, I know the rotation was insane. It was the best in baseball. All 5 guys made every single start that season, which is insane, and they legitimately didn't have to worry about the rotation at all. But I think that rotation, if they added a current day Logan Gilbert, they wouldn't complain about that, because that dude has unbelievable stuff that outside of a select few guys just wasn't a thing in 2001.
Yeah, imagine Logan Gilbert pitching at the top of that rotation with Freddie Garcia. Then you have Aaron Seeley and Jamie Moyer behind him. A lot of teams use 4 starters in the playoffs now. Imagine if the Mariners had that luxury back then. And you talk about Munoz being discussed in lore. Logan Gilbert might be too. You're talking about a dude who's 6'6", has insane extension and gets right on top of you. He throws 99. He's got 6 pitches in his arsenal. That wasn't a thing back then.
Nope. That would be a lot of fun. Maybe they would have beat the Yankees. We wouldn't be so traumatized.
Stupid Derek Jeter flip. The Mariners should have gotten to play the A's that year, and if the Mariners had played the A's, they would have beat them. So, yeah.
Would have won the World Series.
Also, that Diamondbacks team was pretty good with Randy and Kurt Schilling. Like, I won't say for sure, but better chance, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. Also, shout out my friend Alex when you were talking about Matt Brash, how you said Brash would have been talked about in lore. He put out a tweet last year on opening night that kind of blew up, and I think it was hilarious. He tweeted that video of Matt Brash striking out Jose Ramirez when Ramirez fell on his backside, and my friend Alex captioned it with, if Matt Brash threw a baseball in February of 1692, he'd be burned at the stake. Which, well, is there a point there? Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's a fun question. That 0-1 team, it's fun to reminisce on, but I'd also like to see a current version of the Mariners do something like the 0-1 team. That'd be awesome.
Be nice and
some
relaxing.
New memories, you know? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Next question. We have 2 more to go. This is from BDN55540 on Instagram. He says, since Jerry's contract hasn't been extended, will the M's be more aggressive at the deadline?
I think the M's should be aggressive at the deadline no matter what Jerry Dipoto's contract status is. And I don't think just because of what Jerry Dipoto's contract status is, they will be more aggressive. If this was a real thing, if this would actually happen, and Jerry didn't believe he would be part of the Mariners next year, he would trade Colt Emerson or Felony Celston or both in an attempt to massively upgrade the roster. I don't think he's going to do that. Therefore, I don't think because he doesn't have a contract yet that we know of, that he's going to trade those guys. That would be more of a Jack C thing. That would be more of a different incumbent president of baseball operations move, opposed to what Jerry Dipoto will do. Ultimately, we'll see, but I don't think so. I think they should be aggressive no matter what it is, because, frankly, us as Mariners fans deserve an aggressive deadline and a push to the playoffs, because you and I know what happens if they don't make it.
Mm-hmm. I think they should be aggressive. I think they should go out and get some real pieces. But Jerry Dipoto is also not A.J. Preller. And Jerry Dipoto will never do what A.J. Preller does. That's not his style. It's not a sustainable style. And with the Mariners knowing they are a franchise that doesn't have unlimited payroll, there are other ways they have to build a great team. And part of that is through the draft, through international signing, and having good farm systems. So because Jerry understands that, and he very well does, like if the two of us understand it, we know Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander understand it, that contract or not, they're not just going to ship all these guys out of town for 2 months to have a potential run. They're just not going to do it. So I don't think Jerry Dipoto is going to do that. I think the Mariners should be aggressive like you. I don't think they're going to be irresponsible. But to the point of the contract, that being said, like the Mariners need to get this done. I know they've gotten it done in September a lot of years, but I don't know what we're waiting for. Like, I know not everybody out there loves Jerry Dipoto. I would challenge anybody who doesn't to tell me who you feel comfortable, like who you'd want to see get brought in instead, and do you trust the group that would be responsible for hiring the new president of baseball operations and the entire staff to do a successful job with a new hire? I think Jerry Dipoto has done a lot for this organization. I think they're headed in a good direction. I think they have a window that's going to stay open for a while with all these prospects and all the bats they have coming. So I hope they get this contract done.
Yeah. And I still, again, hope they're aggressive at this deadline, because this roster needs it. It needs it, right, contract or not. The final mailbag question we have is from Micah B. Millard on Instagram. And his question is, make a convincing case for Felix Hernandez to be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
So you can make a case. I don't think Felix is going to end up getting in. I just don't know if he quite sustained dominance for long enough to do it. But if you do want to make a case, most 50 WAR pitchers seem to get into the Hall of Fame. More often than not, that happens. Felix was a couple percentages shy of 50 wins above replacement for his career. Here's an example. Jim Katt of the Twins. He pitched through the 60s, the 70s, tiny bit into the 80s. He pitched for 25 years. He threw a lot more innings and pitched for a lot longer than Felix did. Yet the two had nearly the same career WAR. Felix has the lower career ERA. Felix has a Cy Young where Jim Katt doesn't. Felix also has 6 top 10 Cy Young finishes. Katt had 2. So if you want to compare Felix Hernandez to some other guys that are in the Hall of Fame, you can do it. And there are cases, but it's still going to be a tough case.
The difference is now that Felix will get hurt because he didn't pitch enough. I would say back in the day, I mean, you could go back into the 1900s, anytime there when guys were getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think the bar was a little bit lower to make it in the Hall of Fame. There are some players in the Hall of Fame who are, in fact, average players. So if you go off of that theory, sure. But modern day, we have a lot of statistics available to us, and the process to get into the Hall of Fame is evolving, that it just is less likely based on the volume that Felix has pitched. It is less likely. There's a few stats you could cherry pick and make a case for Felix. For example, he has more strikeouts than a notable modern Hall of Famer, Roy Halladay. He's got more Ks than he does. He's got more Ks than my namesake in the Hall of Fame, Christy Mathewson. Pitched in a different era. However, he's got more strikeouts than him. He's more strikeouts than Jim Morris and a bunch of other Hall of Famers. How about a true modern example? These guys have been compared quite a lot when they were pitching. He has pitched more innings than Clayton Kershaw. Do you know that? Clayton Kershaw is a slam dunk Hall of Famer.
That's actually kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
More innings than Kershaw?
Now, Kershaw's the better pitcher, no doubt. He's got 4 Cy Youngs. He's got an MVP. I wouldn't argue that for a second. Clayton Kershaw will go down as one of the 3 greatest left-handed pitchers of all time. He's insane.
Correct.
But if we're talking about volume, I mean, Kershaw's getting in without much of an issue. He's going to get in the high 90s of votes when he gets on the ballot, when he eventually retires. And he'll retire soon. He could retire with less innings than Felix. But Felix has pitched more innings than him, believe it or not. How about a higher? Here's a niche stat. It's called adjusted WAR 7. So WAR 7 takes your best 7-year stretch of WAR and accumulates it together into one number. That stat is helped used to calculate JAWS, which Jay Jaffe came up with, where you add a player's career WAR, his WAR 7, you add them together and you divide them by 2. So you can measure how much better was this player outside of their peak 7 years. And it helps, I'd say, raise the bar for guys who had an amazing 7 years and lowers the bar for guys who had great long careers but weren't as good at their peaks. So that's what that number does. So adjusted WAR 7 accounts, it tries to adjust the pitchers used to throw 350 innings. It essentially caps your season for the old guys at 250 innings and makes it more favorable for modern pitchers who don't throw 250 innings. Here are some guys who Felix has a higher adjusted WAR 7, where he ranks 65th after adjusting for some of these inning counts, by the way. 65th all-time, and there are 66 pitchers in the Hall of Fame. Might I know. 66. And Felix, on this list, is 65th. Do you think Garrett Cole's going to be a Hall of Famer?
He's trending that way.
He's trending that way. Well, Felix has a higher adjusted WAR 7 than he does. That's one thing to note. He's got a higher adjusted WAR 7 than, you might have heard of this guy, Nolan Ryan. Yeah?
Yeah, that guy was half decent.
And plenty of other Hall of Famers. Felix has a higher adjusted WAR 7 than. So it's not impossible to make a case for Felix. It's not. I don't think it's a slam dunk case. He probably could have used 3 to 4 more peak Felix seasons, or close to peak Felix seasons. Then he would have an almost certain case for the Hall of Fame. The problem is, Felix spent a few years in the middle, and then a couple of really bad seasons at the end, which left a sour taste in many of our mouths in terms of how he's getting in the Hall of Fame. But it's not impossible. You know, there's only 28 guys who have appeared in as many or more of the top 5 in Cy Young voting appearances. That's it. That's something.
It's really good. Yeah. I mean, if you want to just use the Harold Baines meter, Felix is getting in. I've seen people on Twitter talk about that a lot. When any player passes the Harold Baines meter, meaning you surpass 38.8 career wins above replacement, aka WAR, like, people will be like, he passed the Baines meter, he passed the Harold Baines meter, because Harold Baines got in with less than 40 wins above replacement for his career. I think a lot of people feel like Harold Baines probably wasn't a Hall of Fame caliber player. But if you want to use that for Felix, you can. Harold Baines played 22 years. Felix played 15. And when you look at Felix's peak, even though he probably could have used more of a 10-year stretch of dominance, that 7-year stretch of dominance he had from 2009 to 2015, he was one of the game's best. He was in the top 3 to 4 pitchers in baseball year after year. He's right up there with Kershaw. He was right up there with others. And the fact he has 6 top 10 Cy Young finishes says a lot. I do wonder if his case would be elevated had the voters actually gotten it right in 2014 and given him that Cy Young over Corey Kluber. If he had that second Cy Young right now, you think people look at him different?
It would help, because that list is pretty exclusive. I think there's less than 10, right? Less than 10 guys who have won multiple?
And Blake Snell's one of them. But
yeah, which makes it a really interesting game. Well, Blake Snell's not a Hall of Famer, but which is why it's a really interesting list, because there are Corey Kluber's not a Hall of Famer, but he's won multiple Cy Youngs and was one of the best pitchers of his decade. He unfortunately didn't have that length. Felix had more length than Corey Kluber did.
Right. Yeah. So there is a case. If you just heard the two of us dive into it and TJ really dove into it, there is a case. But I think both of us are in agreement here in saying it will be tough.
Yeah. It'll be tough for him. We hope he makes it. It'll be pretty cool. His speech would be pretty amazing. But unfortunately, I think Felix right now lands in the Hall of Very Good.
I would agree with that. Hey, if he gets in, are we going to Cooperstown?
I'm down. I'd be down.
Be
fun. Be fun.
Really fun.
When was the last time you were there?
Yeah. I've been twice. I think the most recent time was in high school.
Ooh, I was 10. Man, it's been a while. But I'll be down. If he makes it, I'm in.
Yeah.
We try.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Let's close out the show now. That was great. Great mailbag questions. As always, guys, we'll get to another mailbag in about a month. Good range of questions. I thought that was a lot of fun. But let's close out the show now with Speak Your Mind. What's on your mind, Lyle?
You know, I was talking to you last Friday when we got done hosting Brock and Salk and talking about how, man, I had been so fixated and so focused on preparing for that show and doing that show and making sure it went smoothly to really see much of what was coming in days past that, in weeks past that. And the second we got done with that show, I kind of had this realization once we were done with it. We felt good about it. I don't want to say it was a weight lifted off our chest because we were excited about it, but I think both of us were very, very, detailed about wanting to get it right. So once that was over, I sat there and thought to myself, well, we're going to Dallas in a week for All-Star Week. And now sitting here recording this podcast, it's a day till we leave. So I think that's what's mostly on my mind right now is this is our second All-Star Week. It's our second in 2 years. It's also the first one we've traveled for. And I'm really, really excited about it. I think we've got a lot of fun stuff in mind. I think we're going to do a lot while we're there. And yeah, I've been thinking about it basically since we ended hosting the show on Brock and Salk last week, that sitting here thinking about that. Yeah, I can't wait to go.
And I can't blame us for doing that on Brock and Salk because think about it, like just to peel back the curtain for some of our listeners, in reality, it's an audition. That's what we were doing. We were auditioning to get more opportunities because you don't get, you don't always get opportunities like that. So if you do get it on commercial radio, on big market radio, you want to do well. Like you really want to put all your effort into it. You want to sound right. Even if you aren't. Of course, there are some people in some of the clips we posted in the last couple of days who say we weren't, which is, it's fine. That doesn't matter. But ultimately, you want to spend all the energy possible to make sure an opportunity like that comes out again, and which I think it will, by the way, based on some of the feedback we've gotten. But anyways, so it makes sense we spent all that time on that. But now you're right. We get the sort of clearance of that. And now the opportunity to go to mull around in Dallas and meet some fans. Hopefully some of you will be out there in Dallas as well. That would be super awesome if we get to run into some of you. And, network among the content community and some of the more legacy media community, some of the people we ran into at All-Star Week last year in Seattle that we hope to also run into here in Dallas. I've never been to Dallas. I like checking off new cities. So that'll be a fun part of it as well. And, yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It'll be a little hot, which is fine. But it's gonna be a blast. I'm really looking forward to it. We got some fun content ideas that I don't think we've done yet, which is nice. Mm-hmm. So we get to try some new things. I know people always like new things and new ideas, and we're hoping to use them. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll try and we'll vlog the entire thing. It'll all be on our YouTube channel. You guys can come along for the ride with us whenever we get around to posting those. So that should all be a lot of fun too. So I'm really looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, we were sitting brainstorming this week about what type of stuff we wanted to do at All-Star Week. And I think the two of us put our heads together and thought of some ideas that, like you said, we haven't done yet, both for social media, for YouTube vlogs, and we think people are really going to enjoy them. So hopefully you're keeping your eyes peeled on our social pages and our YouTube pages to see all that stuff. And yeah, I think as long as we have the opportunity to do it, which we will since we're going, it's going to be really fun. And I think we're going to connect with a lot of the people too that we've had on this podcast, even some people we haven't had on the podcast that we've connected with in the past that, are big in the content community or or just in the baseball community. It's fun. Like All-Star Week's one of the 2 times of the year where the whole baseball world really comes together. And All-Star Week even more so than the winter meetings. The winter meetings is the other time where you kind of have the whole baseball world together. But All-Star Week, there's so many people there. You have all the players that come into town. You have all the legacy media that comes into town. You have all these content creators that come into town. You have all these celebrities that come into town. Like the opportunities at All-Star Week to do a bunch of content, to meet a bunch of people, and really to have a bunch of fun, it's endless. So we're really excited about it.
We'll get a celeb on the mic. Which celeb should we get?
I hope so.
Sydney Sweeney?
Why would she be at All-Star Week?
Why not is the real question.
I think there's a better chance she would throw out a first pitch at a Mariners game than being at All-Star Week, because I'm pretty sure she's from Washington.
That'll be good. So we'll get her on the mic then. But any
Sure.
other celebrities that decide to show up there, like Dua Lipa shows
Whatever.
up, getting on the mic.
Yeah. Whatever you say. Listen, if you want to talk about celebrities that could be content people, like 2 guys we really like are the Broadcast Boys, who have a huge channel. Like, they're going to be there. They're playing in the celebrity softball game. So the potential to run into them would be really fun. But if you're thinking of real celebrities...
Well, there are real celebrities in that the celebrity softball game, too. Like actors
exactly.
Singers.
Exactly. So who are we going to see? Again, like you kind of don't know, and that's kind of half the fun of it. There's people we're already planning to meet with, but there's also the unknown factor of who you might just run into and talk to and might get on the mic for some social media stuff. So, yeah, I think we're excited.
Yeah, we are excited. The other thing I have for Speak Your Mind, I just want to give a shout out to the people creating House of the Dragon. They have done a phenomenal job. Me, as one of the biggest Game of Thrones snobs on this planet, who has watched the original series 4 times through, it's when I do that, it's hard for a spin-off series to meet my expectations in the same realm. And yeah, they've done it. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the last episode they did, episode 4, halfway through their second season, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It is so good. Just the fact that you're able to consistently make good episodes after you messed up season 8 of Game of Thrones just so bad. You just ruined it. And to come back, make a spinoff on a different storyline earlier in the timeline and make it really good with all the CGI and stuff with the dragons. It's just amazing. So I need to give them a shout out. They've done a phenomenal job. And they've made my Sundays significantly better.
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, I've been watching too. I don't want to spoil anything either, but there's not a lot of TV series out there, or movie series, that make spinoffs and just nail it. They have nailed it. And I hope it continues to be a really, really good show, because it seems like it's trending that way.
Yeah, and they got 4 seasons too, so and they're going to do a lot. I think they're filming another spinoff right now. So as long as the same people keep directing it, I think it'll still be pretty good. I'm interested to see if they were to make a show without dragons in it, how it would do. Because the lore of dragons makes it look a lot better. I'll say the current House of the Dragon, as you would imagine, has so many dragons. And it's so beautifully shot. And the graphics of how they create these things is just amazing. So to have a show without that would certainly be more interesting. So let's see how they do it. I think the next spinoff they're doing does not have dragons in it, so I'd be curious to see how they do it.
Yeah, me too. I'm sure I'll watch that one also whenever it comes out, but hopefully they've got a plan for it. Hopefully they've got some ways to keep people engaged and interested. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we will.
All right, I think that just about wraps up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. One final reminder, episodes this upcoming week are going to be Monday and Friday instead of Wednesday and Friday. After that, it'll be back to normal programming, normal Wednesday, Friday episodes. So you guys know the drill. You want to listen to the podcast, make sure to download these episodes, leave a 5-star review, leave a written review. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube to like, comment, and subscribe. And then check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube Shorts at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.